Yes, people, how are we all doing? Hope everyone's fit and well. A massive thanks to all my subscribers for your continuing support, and a massive thanks to my Patreon members. The support that I'm getting from them in the group and for supporting the channel goes a long way. But in this episode, I'm going to talk about prison reform, and do I think prison works, and what could be done to make it better and to make it actually work. Or just on my way back from having the sauna, my weekly sauna on the Saturday down at Bannintines. I like to go down there and keep myself fresh on the weekends. But prison, and does it work, and what could be done to better it? So for me, prison doesn't work, especially for the youngsters and the younger lads, the teenage lads, and even the lads in the early 20s, because when they're in that mindset like I was, and you're not really scared of prison, or you're not really bothered about it, and it's just looked at as a place, if you end up, you're going to be amongst your friends, or you're going to meet people there, and you're just going to not really give a toss and just carry on doing what you're doing, and not even changing your mindset, not changing your ways, because you get in there and prison is a breeding ground for crime. You're meeting like-minded people. You might be a first timer and you're going in and you're meeting people that have spent 20 years in prison, older people. Some of the younger lads will probably, well, some of them are getting groomed by the older prisoners. And when I say groomed, I don't mean in that type of way. I mean groomed as in getting took advantage of to go and do something, either in prison or when they are released, go and do a hit on somebody. Or there could be drug users in prison. They've went in with the habits and they might get offered a little bit of drugs to go and do something. So for me, what I would do if I was in charge and I could take control of what happens when youngsters, especially young lads, go to prison, I think every city in the country should have a prison that is specifically designed for first timers. So when they go to prison for the first time, you all go to this establishment, and it's more so a scare tactic for people with short terms ranging up to 6 months or even up to 12 months. And first timers go to this facility, I'll call it facility instead of prison, so they're given a bit of a chance, and they're not surrounded by people that have been in and out the system for years on end, and they're going to end up the same way as them. So they can go to this facility, and it'll be like a training, it should be like a training facility where there's also scare tactics, and there could be ex-prisoners in there that have been in the big jails and they know all about it, so they can tell the young'uns what is going to happen if you get to a proper prison, and what your life is going to end up like, and that it's going to be surrounded by drugs and violence, intimidation on a daily basis. Whereas if they go to this training centre, they could be given an opportunity to start bettering themselves, talking about any issues that they probably 99% of them have, because that's why they end up there in the first place, because they've been in care from a young age, chucked about from system to system. They've ended up in prison and they've known nothing better. Prison is just another system of care that they've been in all their lives, and it's as if nobody cares, and they're just getting chucked about from here to there and then put into prison. But if they get put into a facility like this, where there's care for them, there's psychiatric help, there's psychological help, they get treated from the moment they get to prison. They don't have to wait 10 weeks for a doctor's appointment. They don't have to wait months to see psychologists or psychiatrists. There's people in this establishment that could be giving them help as soon as they arrive, give them drug rehabilitation, get them off the drugs that they're on, get them off the heroin, because that's the dirtiest and the worst drug, and that's the one that turns people into nasty, horrible people, turn them into robbers. They'll rob anybody to get the fix. So get them into a place like this and give them the treatment that they need, then once they seem like they're getting into a better mindset, get them in the gym, get them fit and healthy, and show them that there is another side to life. Because the majority of people that end up like this, they've probably never had a week sober since they were 10, 11, 12-year-old. Like myself, I started using drugs and alcohol from the age of 10, and I didn't have a week where I didn't have drink or drugs until I was 20-year-old and I went to prison. And it's not until I was in prison for 6 months without anything where my mind started becoming clear and I started seeing things from a different light and my mindset was starting to change. So imagine if you could put all these type of people into somewhere like that, these young'uns, and show them that you don't have to get off your heads when you go out and associate with your friends, because that's what everybody thinks they've got to do. You need to get out of that mindset, because everyone thinks, oh, it's Friday night, let's go in session, let's get on the weed, let's get on the drink, get pissed off, have a couple of joints, and you think it's all fun at the time, until you get older and you're suffering with these mental problems, or you're in that much of addiction, you're committing crimes, and you're ending up in prison. So if they had one of these facilities to treat and help youngsters like that, there would be a lot less reoffending. And in this facility, what I'm just making up in my head, by the way, which I think they should have something like this. They should have like a training centre where once they've been in for a month, 6 weeks, and they're starting to feel a bit fresher because they're off the drugs and they're getting the mind in a better place, then they should have workshops where they can either do like a bricklaying course, do the CSCS cards, because all these ground workers and everything at the minute are screaming out for labourers or different people to work on building sites, and they need CSCS cards. So if we put things in place like this for when they're coming up for release, they can actually go straight into employment and get employed by companies that take on ex-offenders, because there is places like this. And I know Kevin Liam, when I've done the podcast with him, he mentioned something about he's working with somebody, or there's a company that specifically takes on ex-offenders because they don't get given a chance when they get released back into society. So places like this would see crime rates dropping, would see people not reoffending. It would help a lot of people. But you've got to think of it, and there is the but does the system want that? Because the system is a money-making scheme, and they're actually making money off prisoners. So if there wasn't as many people going into prison, and there wasn't as many people reoffending, the prison population would probably drop, and then people might be out of work, out of jobs, and then there's not going to be as much money coming into the system. So do the government really want people to stop reoffending? Do they want crime rates to drop? They say they do, but on the money side of it, do they really want that to happen? But if they did, they should be speaking with more people like this that could put ideas into them. And if they put the money into setting a facility up like this in every city in the country, or every other city, where people could go to and be given a chance before they get led on to bigger and worse things. Because the majority of the time, if young'uns go in with a 6-month sentence, they go and meet like-minded people, they make friends, they come out and they meet up with the friends that they've actually met in prison, and they're just committing further crime, taking drugs, getting drunk, committing violence, and it's an ongoing circle. Because now they've had the first taste of prison, they're not scared of going back. The first time is always the worst. The second time, they know what to expect. They know they're going to be meeting people that they already know in there, and it's just going to be an ongoing cycle, and it's just going to be ongoing suffering for everyone involved, victims of the crimes, their families, themselves, and it's going to be an ongoing circle where it could be stopped if they had something like this. And also, they could have something like this for even long-term prisoners. The majority of people in prison, like the long-termers, not even just long-termers doing a few years. Some of the lads, there's only a small minority, but there is ones like myself that want to better themselves whilst they're in there, getting a better mindset, get themselves as fit as possible, both physically and mentally. So if there was other facilities where prisoners could go to, say they've got Cat Bs, they've got Cat Cs, but they should have a facility or a prison where prisoners can be handpicked. It can go off the behaviour, it can go off the way that they're acting in prison, that they're doing courses, they're doing things off their own back where they want to better themselves, but they've went as far as they can in the prison and there's nothing else on offer for them apart from killing time by sitting in your pad, training, reading books, where if they had facilities for these type of prisoners that want to better themselves, they could go to this facility, and it could be like a training facility like I've just mentioned for the young offenders, but this one could be for the adults, where they can go and further their education and then get in touch with outside agencies so that when they're released they can go straight into employment, and they'll have the CSCS card, they'll have numerous certificates on health and safety, first aid, they'll have a boatload of stuff behind them so that when they're released they've got somewhere to go. They could have premises where they're set up, because there is another scheme up here in the northeast run by a lad named Gary Crooks, and he specialises in getting ex-offenders into housing, and there is landlords that only take in ex-offenders, but obviously they're vetted and everything first to make sure they're not just going to smash the house up and trash it and just waste it. But if they had something like this where they get housed as soon as they're released, there's employment in place, then it's going to save a lot of chaos and a lot of people from re-offending, and it's going to benefit the community, it's going to benefit victims, it's going to benefit the families of the offenders, it's going to benefit everybody all round. So they should have things like this in place to stop any re-offending. And like I've mentioned, it's also going to help the lads that want to turn their lives around better themselves, because there is a small minority, and it probably will be a larger minority if the offenders that are in prison seen this scheme actually working, they would maybe think twice about taking drugs, getting into violence while still in prison. They might think, right, I want a bit of this, I want to go to that prison, I want to better myself, I want a house and I want employment on release. And it'll probably save a lot of chaos in the prison system, and it'll help people all around. There'll probably be a lot less violence in the prisons, a lot less drugs, and a lot more people seeing the other side of it and wanting to better themselves. So that's what I think on prison reform, and that's what I think they should have in the system, an opportunity for people to better themselves, to go to this establishment and do something positive. Then these people could go on and do things like what I'm trying to do as well, or what I am doing, and helping other people, going into organisations and helping the youngsters, the ones that are going off the rails, even like I'm doing myself, going in, I'm helping people that's at risk of suicide, I'm going into changing lives, or I have done in the past, and I am planning on going back in and talking to the people, trying to give them a bit of advice and inspiration to show them that there is another side of life, that it's not all doom and gloom. And ex-offenders are the best people, in my opinion, to try and talk to the youngsters, because when I've spoken to youngsters, they've sat, they've listened to us, whereas probation officers, teachers, police officers, whatever, people in authority, they do not want to listen to them. But when they're listening to the likes of myself, they're taking it in, because the likes of me who's been there, they've done it, they've been through the system, they've done what they were doing when I was their age, and I've got the knowledge and the advice to pass on to them. And when they're sitting and listening to it, they might be actually thinking, you know what, you don't have to go through life out of your head on drink and drugs and using acts of violence on people, getting through life with intimidation, crime and violence. You can go through life in a positive way, enjoy your life, create a family, because that's what life is all about, realistically. When you get to a certain age and you realise what life's about, life is about happiness, family, freedom, and having fun. And when you're a youngster, and you're in that mindset, all of these things that I've just spoke about there, you think it's boring. You think having fun is going out with your pals, getting pissed up, taking drugs, going to the nightclubs, fighting, banging people out. And this is what you think at that age, when you're in that mindset, is what's fun, when in fact it's not fun for anybody involved, and all it does is lead to sadness, incarceration, and loss of freedom. You lose all these things that you think you take for granted, actually. So I'll leave that one there, people, but what I'm getting at in that video is what should be done to help more people. Don't just lock them up and chuck away the key. Try and help people. Get to the root of the problem, because the majority of people I've met in prison, 90%, have got a sad, sad story. They've been abused as kids. They've been left abandoned by the parents to fend for themselves. They've went through hardship and fucking tragedy, and they've ended up in prison, and they're inflicting pain on other people because they know no better. They've felt pain all their lives and they know no different. So if we get to the root of the problem before it's too late, it's going to save a lot more people from prison and heartache. But I hope you're enjoying that, people. And if you are enjoying the content, remember to like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day, people. Take care.